Paroxysms is the title of a story by Ezekiel Kralin, as follows. Email correspondence, July 23rd and 25th, 2023. Subject, on top of everything else, sciatica. To my dear Watson. Date, July 23rd. I was beginning to get those lower back twitches a few days ago, ignoring it as best I could, but wondering if this is a prelude to something worse, and it was. Peaked last night. Painful spasms with the slightest movement. I almost had to crawl on the floor like last time several years back, but it didn't get quite that bad, and with a little help from acetaminophen, the worst is over. However, I had to walk the dogs last night, several times, in fact, into the wee hours, since Lucky had the runs and also puked a few times. Maybe the treats are too rich in fat for him. I know he has a delicate stomach. Flacco, on the other hand, is perfectly fine. It was unbelievably painful walking up and down the stairs even one time, but 4 times was a killer, on top of which I had to pick up one of the pooches to keep her from barking at a resident descending the stairway. He smiled in passing. Cute doggy. While I grinned in pain and said, "Thanks, emergency run," then delivered Flacco to my cot and rushed back downstairs to retrieve her brother. Ouch, fuck, ouch, fuck, ouch, fuck. I had to grip the railing frequently to keep from collapsing in pain. Fortunately, no one was coming down the stairs or up when I brought him inside, so I did not have to carry him, one of Glob's little mercies. I woke up around 6:30 due to another nasty spasm, got out of bed with much difficulty, and finally reached the sink, where the spasms kept striking, and I held onto the ledge for dear life while reaching out for the blessed acetaminophen and popped 2 pills. Then, since I was now up, and lying down upon the comforters once again would be another ordeal, I hobbled over to the window and looked out, breathing in the cool ocean breeze. "Please make this pain go away," I called out to the gods from above in my own mind. It was a gray sky morning, the moist air pleasant on face and lungs. How am I going to get to Trader Joe's in this condition? Then I walked about some more, testing my spinal twitches, which seemed to be diminishing at this point. I figured I should now resume resting on my cot and watch some videos for an hour or so, but no. Lucky jumped out and began to squat over one of the sheets of newspaper I had laid out. Nothing happened, though, no poop expelled. But it was then that I noticed a puddle of diarrhea drying out a few feet away, its color blending into the wood. It must have occurred while I was asleep, and explains this light odor I smelled throughout the night, which I thought perhaps was coming up from the sewers. I tossed another sheet of newspaper over it and hurriedly donned shoes, jacket, and hat to bring the dogs outside pronto. As we crossed Noe Street, Lucky pulled desperately in the direction of a tree right beside the olive-green news rack. Once he got there, he squatted to release a surprisingly large dollop of gooey brown feces. We moseyed on up to the next block, sniffing along the way, then turned around and proceeded to huffle, though I stopped to sit on the steps of a corner store at 16th Street, across from the back side of Hotel California North. It looked its usual drab, flesh-toned monstrosity for which it's so well known. That was when Lucky puked 3 times. Nothing scary came up, just dinner. I felt bad leaving that vomit there. The best I could do was take a copy of the Bay Area Reporter from its stand and place some sheets over the evidence. He pooped once more across the street, but this time it was just a few ounces of water. Once back hovel, I finally got around to mopping up the noxious puddle with some old microfiber rags, which I then deposited in a kitchen-sized liner and knotted up. It wasn't much fun dealing with my spinal convulsions as I crouched down and stood up 3 times before spreading a thick layer of baking soda over the spot and covering it up with last week's edition of the BAR. Phew! But once done, the paroxysms of pain had subsided to almost nothing, much to my relief. Sorry about that. Imagine if I also had to deal with prepping my room for a bedbug treatment on top of all that, Watson. It just wouldn't be doable. So it's a very good thing Paolo agreed to postpone it for a time. Funny how things work out, even in the midst of crisis. Everyone wants things to run smoothly in their lives all the time. Yours truly no exception, but that's never going to happen, at least not after the evolutionary rapture, which I believe is just around the corner. And I don't mean Noe Street or 16th. Lucky puked 2 more times before he began to feel his chipper self somewhat, drank some water and hopped up onto the cot, curled up and drifted into Poochie dreamland. But a half hour later, around 9:30, their master called up to my window, "Bring down the dogs and a lighter, please." So I did, and he seemed to be in excellent spirits, like our last bunch of meetups, but sadly that didn't last long, for he hollered loudly from where he sat at the corner end of Super Duper. "Zeke, what the fuck did you do to my dogs? Zeke Kralin, get down here, get the fuck down here." Well, he made a big loud ruckus for 15 minutes non-stop, give or take a few, accosted me with the usual glob-awful accusations while the pup shivered in fear from his screeching verbosity. I couldn't get a syllable in edgewise, but that didn't matter anyway, because if I did, he'd just attack my words as well. He wouldn't even admit he left me with the hounds 2 nights in a row. He insisted it was 1, and I was just making that up to screw with his head. I did manage to interject a full sentence somewhere toward the end of our bodhisattva clash. "You are one of the most evil mind-fuckers I've ever met, Deke. You live to destroy the lives of those around you like a demented monkey on meth. That's exactly what you are." Upon hearing those words, he denied he has ever smoked crystal, just tobacco and pot. "So what's that glass pipe doing right beside you?" I queried, while pointing to the spot between his right thigh and where the pups sat, still trembling with lowered heads. "What pipe?" he retorted while looking around for it, and found it hidden beneath his leg. He picked it up, pocketed it, and declared, "That's for smoking my hash," and then opened his jacket to reveal a plump baggie filled with shake stuffed into a pocket. "See, that's all I touch, pot and hash. Don't give me that, Deke," I admonished. "You smoke meth right in front of my building all the time, sharing it with others who are drawn to it like a magnet." In sum, I departed on a bad note, the canines in distress over their master's behavior and my disappearance. It's now 11:37 a.m. as I close this missive. Don't even know if he's still out there, but I think not, since I can't hear either mutt's occasional bark. Be that as it may. Now off to TJ's I do go. Hi-ho, hi-ho, hi-ho. Subject: another pajama party last night to My Dear Watson, date July 25th, 2023. I didn't expect Deke to show up last night, considering the blowout we had that morning, but just minutes after midnight, he called up to me. "The dogs want to stay with you tonight," he said soon as I stepped outside. Flacco was untethered and already stood by the entrance, wagging her tail in great excitement. I blocked her way with the gate partly open as Deke continued. "I like to ride my bike at night, so I figured this might work for you." Pleased to see he was in an excellent state of mind and neatly dressed, I replied, "Yes, it does. Thanks." Sidebar: Actually, Watson, this is a superb arrangement, what with the nighttime hours and thus no busy thoroughfare of residents, delivery agents, and workers to impede my own flow, thereby averting the risk of ruffled feathers by certain drama queen bitches who were Nazis by any other name. Whereupon I bent down to grab Flacco's leash, but quick as lightning, she dashed between my legs and into the lobby and up the stairs. When I hurried to catch up, slower than I'd have liked because my sciatica was still a thing, she was zipping up and down the hallway with wild abandon, Yoda ears pinned back like she was running against the wind, not one single bark or yelp out of her, just the pattering of those precious little paws on the carpeted floor. After all, what is the point of a long corridor with twists and turns for little doggies other than exploding into a joy-running frenzy? As soon as I opened the door, she veered left on her return from one end of the hallway to dash into my hovel and onto the cot. Jabbing spinal twitches impeded my progress back down the stairs to retrieve Lucky, though nowhere near the agony as the day before. The moment he saw me exit the building, he emitted this warbling, deep-throated yowl toward the sky for a grand 5 seconds and in my direction, which startled everyone within earshot, including Deke, who promptly turned away from conversing with another indigent, looked down at his furry charge, then at yours truly, to exclaim with a grin spanning all time and space, "Wow, where did that come from?" "I don't know, Deke. He never howled like that before," I replied, while crouching down to pet the canine. "But he's obviously super happy to see me again. Believe me, Deke, it's mutual." Sidebar: And a great relief it is, Watson, to see Lucky once more in joyful spirits and glowing with health after that bout with diarrhea and vomit the previous night. Neither quadruped appeared hungry, because after exchanging our affections all around, they fell into a deep rest. They remained undisrupted the entire night. For that reason, I didn't bother to feed them. The following morning, Flacco roused from the box I had set by the closet around 7:20 a.m. She pattered over to the window, stood up and looked out, then approached me seated at my chair, wagging her curly tail and gazing up at me with those sparkly golden brown eyes. She had to go poopies, as did Lucky, who leapt off the cushy bedding a moment later to join her sister. Well, let me tell you, Watson, I couldn't believe 2 doggies so diminutive in size could defecate such a ginormous quantity as they did this morning. I could barely tie their poopy bags into a knot without some of the contents oozing out. I hope you're not munching on an English muffin as you read this section, or anything else for that matter. Upon returning to our wee sanctuary, they immediately resumed their sleep, and I returned to my workstation, happy to have given them such relief before the workaday world even began. For the next hour and a half, I was busy cobbling together all the MCN posts, mostly from the discussion list, but not entirely, for the next 2 chapters. Yes, they are that copious and worth their weight in gold. Sidebar. Considering that digital outputs weigh virtually zilch, please interpret my metaphor, referencing the value of these posts as you wish. I usually prefer to feed them breakfast around 10 a.m., but when the clock showed 9:30, I decided to prepare their meal right then, just to be sure they're fed before Deke returns, which could be any moment, or much later, or anywhere in between. I had no idea. You know how he is. To my surprise, neither pup was interested, so the food went to waste. Deke didn't show up till noon, and soon as I delivered both Brindlekin to him, I commented, "You must have given them quite a feast yesterday, because neither dog was hungry in the least, and this morning they each dumped a huge poop, bigger than I've ever seen them do before, and on top of that, they didn't want breakfast either." "That's all they do," he retorted, "just poop and piss. I've never had a dog before, let alone 2, that dumped and peed so much. Every time I turn around, it's like they got to go again." Well, Watson, that ticked me off no end, but I contained my wrath and firmly replied, "No, that's not what I mean, Deke. There've never been any trouble over that. This time around was definitely unusual, and the only thing that makes sense is you treated them to quite a smorgasbord yesterday evening, or thereabout." To be continued.